Hello everyone, welcome back to my assignment video for session 7. In this session you're going to have a quiz on reliability and validity, which you studied last week. As always, the hard copy is available in course materials, and you have 2 chances to take it as always. Make sure you take advantage of the quiz discussion board at some point after you take the hard copy, after you take the first online version, or never. You also need to continue reading in Popham 2017 chapter 6. That's on the selected response test, and Chapuis, Stiggins, Chapuis, and Arter 2012. That is also on creating selected response tests. So these are very important for this week's and this session's and next session's assignments. There is a discussion board this week on posting your 4 or 5 learning targets. I would prefer that you did 4, but I know there are people that will do 5. And those learning targets are going to be centered on your questions for the selected response test on the EdTPA Elementary Education Assessment Handbook. So some of you are thinking, what do I do this selected response test on? Math? English? No, you do it on the EdTPA's Elementary Education Assessment Handbook. I've also made the initial selected response test discussion board available, where you're going to upload a copy of your test, and that's it. That's all you're going to do. You're going to upload a copy of your test. You're not going to. That's not a discussion board. You're just going to upload a copy so your classmates your group mates can download a copy and take it. And they're going to post it in another discussion board, which I've also made available. So, where you give feedback and you take the test and post your answers. This discussion board will be open for a week. I know it's a modified discussion board rubric, which says if you post up to 7 days, you will get an A credit. But that's it. I'm only having open for weeks because that's all you're doing is creating your targets, and then you're going to comment on your classmates' targets. It's due on Sunday, but I'm not going to close it. That's why I just say it's due on Sunday. The longer you take to post those and get feedback on them, or if you don't do it at all, you're going to lose a little bit of credit. It's not worth a lot. I think it's worth about 1% of your grade. But you will not get feedback, and it will affect the grade you get on your selected response test, which is it's a lot of weight. Okay, we're going to begin our performance task by becoming familiar with the EdTPA Elementary Education Handbook. And note the way I've referenced the EdTPA in this, in my teaching the written version of my teaching memo, because many of you will cite it wrong when you do your 3-part analytic summary. So make sure you get that right. I would recommend looking at task 1, the planning for assessment part, and task 3, assessing learning, and the 5 rubrics that make up that section. And I've listed those 6 rubrics here. Rubric 5, which is planning assessments to monitor and support student learning, and then rubric 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15, which you can see the names of them. So this is just a suggestion, not mandatory. You'll see the exemplar tests that I've listed, which you should look at to get suggestions for learning targets, questions, etc., etc. What I find what's most important about the rubrics is the differences between a score of 2 and 3, which is passing. A 3 is passing, and the difference between a 3 and 4. A 4 is a score you would need to offset any score of 2 that you may get. So I believe that technical aspects of the EdTPA, such as the 3 tasks, how many videos, permissions you need, etc., to me those aren't big ideas because you're going to have to know these anyway when you submit your work. So to me, what's more important is the nuances between rubric levels. But again, as I said, that's not mandatory. You can do your test on how many videos can you have, how long does this have to be, etc., etc. Who do you get permission from? And so that's up to you. But again, it's going to be hard to make reasoning questions on those types of information. That's knowledge information. The most difficult task my students have had in previous semesters is creating the 4 or 5 learning targets on which to base their questions. Targets need to be specific and measurable. You need to avoid things like students will understand. That's too vague. Students will be familiar with. Too vague. I have provided resources for you to do this. If you look in ancillary materials, if you look in course materials, selected response test material, you'll find everything you need. You find my video, you'll find exemplar tests, you'll find how to write good learning targets, good learning objectives. So everything you need is there. The more I become familiar with the EdTPA, the more I believe we need to be aware of the nuances of the rubric. That's what people struggle with when they take it, and that's why they fail it. I've also found that students have an aversion to creating reasoning targets and questions. I challenge you to read Chappuis et al., page 139, Wiggins, many of you have already read the Wiggins article, and Brookart article, which is also in, I believe that's in the selected response test materials. So be sure to use the verbs for the learning targets that I provide in course materials. Avoid using understand, will be familiar with. Avoid those. Those are not specific and measurable. Okay, here's a sample question that I have here that's a higher order thinking question that is a reasoning question. To receive a level 4 on rubric 12, which one of the following would make more sense? And then there are 4 choices. So you can see that the answer can't be gleaned from searching for the correct answer in the EdTPA handbook. Instead, you must make an inference based on your understanding of the nuances of the rubric. There are other sample reasoning questions in the exemplars in Session 7 course materials. As you begin to create your selected response test, be aware of the selected response test rubric. And you can click on it here in the written portion of this teaching memo, and it outlines all the requirements. You will have a chance to revise your test before submitting it to me for grading. So take advantage of the feedback you will receive from me and from your classmates. So you're going to get feedback on your first draft before you get graded on your final draft. So the process is going to be a first draft, feedback, second draft, you get feedback from your classmates, but not me on the second draft. Then you submit it for grading. So everybody should be able to get an A on this. Unfortunately, they don't. People usually don't change their initial, some people do. But many people don't change their initial draft. It's like, I've done it. I'm done with that. And it really affects your grade. Okay, so there's plenty to read this session, along with Chappuis et al., chapters 4 and 5. There's Popham, chapter 6. And there are materials in course materials and some formative assessment ideas in ancillary materials. So those are just extra stuff for you to download and use or watch and to use because it's good formative assessment practice. So that's it for this week. Good luck.